My name is Sadie Whitmore, 31 years old, raised in a white mansion nestled in an upscale neighborhood of Greenwich, Connecticut. To outsiders, my family was the embodiment of the American dream. My father, Calvin Whitmore, ran a successful real estate investment firm. My mother always appeared picture perfect at charity luncheons and country club golf events, and the three Whitmore children, myself included, all attended prestigious schools. But behind those walnut doors, the reality was nothing like the Christmas photos on our hallway walls. Everything in our home revolved around Calvin, a man who believed love could be measured in achievements and social status. He valued revenue charts more than his children's report cards, and his gaze toward me never mirrored the pride he had for my siblings. Connor, the eldest, was 4 years older than me and born to be Dad's golden boy. He excelled at baseball, went to Princeton, and walked straight into the family business as if the path had been paved before he could walk. Every compliment, every proud remark landed squarely on Connor's shoulders. Even in the family's New Year's letters, Dad always called him the rightful heir. Tessa, my younger sister, was different. She didn't have to try, she was adored simply for existing. Tessa had a soft-spoken manner, a perfectly timed smile, and an uncanny ability to soothe Dad's temper with a cup of tea and a gentle, "I know how hard you work, Daddy." I tried that once. Didn't work. Whatever I said or did, he responded with a dismissive nod, or worse, a cold, judgmental silence. I never broke the rules, never slipped in my studies. I earned a full scholarship to Brown University, yet it was dismissed as decent for someone ordinary. One time, I sent home a newsletter announcing I'd been named Top Finance Student of the Year. Dad's response? "You should check how many of those kids are actually wealthy." During my sophomore year of college, Connor got caught driving under the influence. Mom panicked, Dad was furious. At the police, not at Connor. The next day, he called his attorney and smoothed it over. That same year, I passed the CFA exam ahead of schedule, not a single word from him. At 28, I was recruited by a wealth management firm in Chicago as an investment analyst. I rented my own place, paid off my student loans, and never asked for a penny. But during the 4th of July family gathering, when relatives asked how I was doing, Dad merely said, "Sadie's smart, but she doesn't know how to leverage opportunities. She's always trying to do everything her own way." Then he went on to brag about Connor's latest acquisition of a commercial tower, despite everyone knowing most of the funding came from Dad's trust. Tessa, meanwhile, was working as a marketing assistant for a luxury beauty brand. Her job mostly involved attending events and posting on social media. But Dad told his friends she was leading global brand operations. And me? I had just helped clients achieve nearly 17% growth in a volatile market. But he called me our little finance girl. The older I got, the clearer it became that my efforts were always dimmed by his built-in favoritism. I wasn't like Connor, the embodiment of his ambitions. I wasn't like Tessa, the one who made him feel adored. I was the one in the middle, treated like a background character in a family drama directed by him. And slowly I began to understand. His indifference had never been about me not being good enough. It was because, from the very beginning, I was never the lead in his story. I moved to New York at 29, carrying 2 suitcases, an old laptop, and just enough savings to cover a month's rent in Brooklyn. Unlike Connor, I had no starter fund, no letters of recommendation from Dad. I began by sending out over 100 job applications. Most went unanswered. My first job was as an analyst at a small private finance firm with just 3 people in a musty 3rd-floor office in the Flatiron district. I worked 12-hour days and studied for my CFP certification on weekends. No one called my name at family gatherings. But the numbers started calling it. 18 months later, a more reputable fund management company noticed me. A year after that, I transitioned to Knox & Brewster Capital, headquartered on the 62nd floor of a Manhattan glass tower. On my first day walking into that building, I wondered, if Dad saw this place, would he be proud? Every step up in my career, from analyst to portfolio manager to vice president, I kept to myself. I didn't post online, didn't tell relatives, didn't call home to brag. But inside, I wasn't at peace. I still waited for the day he'd call just to say, "I misjudged you." Then the opportunity came. I was appointed Director of Private Wealth Strategy, a position rarely held by anyone under 35. With a seven-figure salary and equity bonuses, I could now live anywhere I wanted, buy anything once considered extravagant. But I only thought of one thing. 3 weeks after the promotion, I put down a deposit on a Mercedes Maybach S680, deep forest green with metallic sheen and luxurious brown leather interiors. It was the same car Dad once mentioned over dinner years ago. Only 3 guys at my golf club own it. That's what real class looks like. I never forgot the way his eyes lit up. Not once had they looked that way at me. I didn't buy the car because he needed it. I bought it as an investment, not in a vehicle, but in the possibility of being loved. In my head, I imagined him opening the gift box, seeing the sleek key with the silver star, looking up, his eyes stunned. Sadie, is this? The life doesn't follow your imagination. I invited him to the Ocean Club in Darien, the restaurant where he usually hosted his VIP clients. He arrived on time in a white shirt and silver gray tie, sat down, and didn't ask how I was. He simply said, "Why this place? The prices are ridiculous." I smiled and quietly placed the key box on the table. He looked at it, frowned, then opened it. His first reaction was surprise, second, hard to read, third, suspicion. "Sadie, what are you trying to buy back?" he asked, his voice calm and slow, but like ice water down my spine. I kept my composure. "I got promoted. This car is a Father's Day gift, that's all." He turned the key in his hand, the light from the chandelier catching on the polished chrome. Then he gave a slight, sarcastic laugh. "Promoted, huh? At that place? I can't even remember the name." He leaned back. "All right, where's the car?" I signaled the valet. When the Maybach pulled up to the granite-lined entrance, its LED lights casting a soft glow across the pavement, it looked like a private showcase. Dad stepped outside, circled the vehicle like a man evaluating a real estate deal. He didn't speak for 2 whole minutes. Then, finally, he said, "Hope you didn't dip into margin to buy something this frivolous." That night, I drove back to New York alone. The wind cut through the window gap, the dashboard lights blinked at me like mockery. I used to think that if I could drive his dream car to his doorstep, things would change. But it turns out someone who refuses to see you, no matter what you're driving, will always turn away the moment you need them to look. I used to believe my father's coldness was personal, that he just didn't like my personality, my choices, the way I refused to follow his pre-drawn path. But everything began to crack one autumn evening when I took an at-home DNA test, for what seemed like a harmless reason, to trace my ancestry. The results came back 3 weeks later. I opened the email at JFK Airport while waiting for a business flight to Denver. The genetic map showed mostly Northern European heritage, no surprise there, but one small line stopped me cold. No paternal match detected with the declared father. I read it 3 times. On the 4th, I had to sit down near gate 12 because my hands were shaking too much to hold my phone. I had never questioned my bloodline. Never. All my pain I'd chalked up to coldness, favoritism, but never denial of origin. I stayed silent throughout the trip. I worked, spoke at the conference, met with clients, then lay awake in the hotel room at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, if he's not my biological father, then who created me? Back in New York, I began searching for answers. A week later, I called home, casually asking Mom about that Christmas, the year I was born, what they had done, where they had gone. She hesitated, then said, "We didn't go anywhere. Your father had a project in Cape Cod. I stayed home. I had just given birth." I asked, "Do I have any newborn photos?" She paused for a few seconds, then said, "A few. I'll find and send them to you." 3 days later, I got an email with 3 blurry photos, all of me and Mom. None with Calvin. No hugs, no standing beside me, not even a touch. I began to feel like I was walking through a familiar house where every object had been swapped. Each small detail made me question more. A few days later, while picking up paperwork from home for Mom's year-end charity records, I waited until he left the office. I stepped into his study. On his desk, a silver-edged wooden comb sat among a pile of papers. I picked it up, saw a single hair caught in the teeth, and sealed it in the zip bag I'd brought. I don't remember whether I held my breath or exhaled on the way out. All I know is by the time I was miles away, I realized I had instrumental music playing, something I never listened to. I mailed the hair sample to the same lab, requesting a specific comparison to my existing DNA file. The result arrived on a Wednesday evening. I just walked home from the subway after a long day of back-to-back meetings. My inbox read, "Biological relationship confirmation, Sadie Whitmore." I didn't open it right away. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, sat down, and placed my laptop on my lap. Then I clicked, "Conclusion. No direct biological relationship detected between the hair sample and test subject. Probability of Calvin Whitmore being the biological father, less than 0.01%. I didn't cry. The feeling wasn't sharp enough to name. Only one thing echoed in my head. So it wasn't my fault. All these years I'd strained to become someone worthy of his pride without knowing I was never part of his emotional framework to begin with. I wasn't his blood. I was the embodiment of something he could never forgive. A mistake, a secret, a living reminder of what he couldn't control. I haven't said anything to Mom, not yet. But the printed report sits in an envelope inside my black leather handbag, the one I carry on formal occasions. And I know the day I open it in front of everyone will come. Not soon, but not late either. Calvin Whitmore's 65th birthday party was held at the family estate in Ridgefield, where every lamppost bore donor plaques from charitable foundations, and every wall in the main hall flaunted one of his many honorary awards. I'd always found the place suffocating, but this year I returned with a plan. The Mercedes Maybach I bought for him 3 weeks prior was staged right outside the front door, part of the decor. No one knew it was from me. No one was allowed to say my name. I entered wearing a floor-length black silk gown. Minimalist in design, elegant enough to avoid being called flashy, conservative enough to dodge his usual jabs about inappropriate seriousness. I had prepared everything. In the bag on my shoulder was a cream envelope with the DNA results, closer to my heart than anything else in my 31 years of life. Connor and Tessa had already arrived. My brother, in a light gray suit, smiled like a man running for office. My sister gave her usual polished toast from the balcony, voice smooth like a TV host. My mother poured wine, hand trembling slightly, smile frozen in practiced form. I stood by the cocktail table, listening to everyone recount the family's legacy of success as if I had never existed. When everyone had taken their seats at the long, white-clothed table, Calvin stood up. Brandy glass in hand, his voice rang out with the calm confidence of someone who had played this role for decades. Thank you all for being here. 65 years of life, and what I'm most proud of isn't the fortune or the accolades. It's my 3 incredible children who have carried on the legacy I've built. He turned to Connor. You, son, are the embodiment of the Whitmore spirit, tenacious, sharp, and smart enough to invest in the right things. Then to Tessa. You're not just beautiful. You connect people. You understand what many business veterans never do. Relationships are currency. I tightened my grip on my glass. His gaze finally swept across to me, then paused deliberately. And Sadie, he paused for effect, like a seasoned actor. The whole table held its breath. Sadie has always chosen her own path, sometimes so much her own she's lost direction. But hey, every family needs someone to act as contrast. He smiled, not warmly, but like a clean slice through candlelit air. No one spoke. No one laughed. A few averted their gaze. My mother dipped her head. Tessa nervously reached for food. Connor gave me a strained, pitying smirk. I set my glass down, lifted my chin. Interesting, Dad, I said. Calm, but loud enough to rise above the chamber quartet in the background. Choosing your birthday as the day to rank your children. Not the worst idea. Shame I was never even entered in the competition. His brow furrowed. What are you saying? I quietly opened my bag, pulled out the cream envelope, and placed it in front of him. It looked harmless, but the truth inside it had the power to rip apart the facade he'd built over 3 decades. You should open it, or I can help. My mother whispered, Sadie, don't, but it was too late. I tore the edge, drew out the letter with the embossed logo of the Genetics Center. I didn't need to read it again. I knew every line by heart. Holding it forward, my voice calm as ever. These are DNA results. You are not my biological father. A chill swept through the room like a window had been thrown open. Utensils stopped clinking. Silence, heavy, absolute, settled like fog. You're not my father, so I guess I don't need your pride. I looked him in the eye. And I certainly don't need to be called a failure by a man who never had the right to call himself my dad. I stood. All eyes followed as I walked the length of the white-draped table. At the door I turned. Oh, and the Maybach outside? That was mine, bought with the paycheck of a directionless finance girl. Don't leave the keys in your coat pocket. I'm taking it back. I walked out, heels striking the stone floor like the final notes of an overture, long overdue for a scene change. Behind me, silence. In front of me, a tall iron gate, already open. I stepped out of the grand hall under the stunned stares of over 30 guests. From my father's business partners to distant relatives, no one stopped me. No one dared. The Maybach was still parked out front, its lights reflecting faintly off the glass dome, my silhouette mirrored on the hood. I pressed the key. The door unlocked with a soft click. Quiet, but loud enough to declare, "This is mine, and no one gets to deny it anymore." I slid into the driver's seat and shut the door with a firm thud. My hand gripped the steering wheel, palm still burning. I didn't start the engine right away. For a few seconds I sat in silence, eyes closed. I remembered my mother's expression as I pulled out the envelope. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition, a flash of panic, as if she knew I had uncovered what she had buried for 3 decades. I started the car. The engine roared smoothly, like a rare beast finally freed from a golden cage. I pulled away from the front gate, glancing once in the rearview mirror. Behind me, the iron gates began to close. Not just the entrance to that estate, but to a chapter of my life I had just ended with a single turn. The long sloped road rolled past rows of cedar trees, garden lights retreating into the distance, pale glows that no longer had power over me. On my left stood the mansion where I first learned silence. On the right, the lawn where I crashed my bike at 8. He hadn't come to help, only watched and said, "If you want to grow up, you get up yourself." Today, I got up. Not from a fall, but from 31 years of emotional bruises no one ever dared call by name. I drove onto the state highway, streetlights sparse, only the dashboard casting its glow across my face. I pulled into a rest stop, rolled down the window, took a deep breath, and opened my phone. 12 missed calls from my mother, 7 texts from Tessa, and 1 missed call from Connor, the rarest gesture of all. I opened my mother's texts first. The first line, "It's not what you think." The second, "Your father didn't know everything. I'll talk, if you'll let me." I didn't reply. Then Tessa, "Sadie, everyone's in chaos. I don't know what to say, but I believe you, always have." Connor didn't leave a message, just that one call. I didn't need to check. I knew it would have said, "Why'd you have to do that? Happy now?" I didn't respond to anyone. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed. I don't need anyone to declare my worth. I don't need a nameplate to live in my truth. I am not a defective daughter. I am a whole human being. I looked at what I had written and hit save. I didn't go back to my New York apartment that night. I booked a small hotel room in Beacon, near the Hudson River. A place no one could find me for a few days. I needed quiet. Not to think, but to recover. The next morning, while having breakfast alone, I opened my laptop and logged into my personal investment portal. I sold part of the equity I'd been building over the last 3 years and transferred the funds to a new account I had created the night before, under my name with no ties to the Whitmore family. The name of the account? Sadie Whitmore Legacy Fund. The next morning, I woke up in that small hotel room by the Hudson River to nearly 30 missed calls, 14 from my mother, 5 from Tessa, the rest from the Ridgefield House number I had long since deleted. Not a single one from my father. Nothing from Connor. I poured myself a cup of black tea and stepped onto the balcony. The morning chill sobered me faster than caffeine ever could. As I played the first voicemail, my mother's voice cracked through the speaker, like she was trying to speak through a storm. Sadie, please hear me out. This is something I should have told you a long time ago. I froze, back pressed to the glass, phone tight to my ear. Your biological father's name was Michael Reese. I met him my senior year at Wellesley. He studied engineering at Dartmouth. Gentle, kind, and nothing like the world your grandparents had planned for me. She paused for a long moment before going on. We were in love for over a year, but when I found out I was pregnant, he had just received a 3-year research fellowship in Italy. I didn't tell him. Back then, my parents were arranging my engagement to your father, or, well, to Richard. I bit my lip. The shock wasn't as sharp as it had been the night before, but something still ached, like realizing you've lost a bone your body had grown used to carrying. Richard always knew you weren't his. I told him from the beginning. He said it didn't matter, that he wanted a family and would accept everything about my past. I believed him. Another pause. But once you were born, he grew distant. He wouldn't touch you. He never rocked you to sleep. He looked at you like a debt I'd dragged in. I closed my eyes. The air was colder, but I didn't go inside. I needed to hear it all. I was wrong, Sadie. I was wrong to stay silent. Wrong to let you grow up thinking you had to earn love. I saw the way he mocked you, how he praised Connor and Tessa while pretending you didn't exist, like you were a scratch on the marble he was polishing. I thought I'd be angry, but what I felt was emptiness. Her final text read, "If you're willing, I'd like to see you, not to explain, but to apologize, as a person, not as a mother." I didn't reply, but deep down, I already knew. I would go. 3 days later, I picked a small cafe in Dobbs Ferry, about an hour from Manhattan. I arrived early. My mother, Margot Whitmore, walked in wearing a plain brown sweater. Her face was bare, untouched by the polish she wore to galas. She looked real. She sat across from me, gripping her tea before lifting her gaze. "Thank you for coming." I said nothing. I let her speak. "You look like him," she began, voice trembling. "The way you watch people. The way you go silent when you don't accept something. You don't have Richard's blood, and none of his cruelty in you either." I stared into her eyes. "Why did you let me grow up in that house?" She didn't look away. "Because I was weak. I was afraid the truth would destroy everything. Afraid he'd throw us out. Afraid of losing the perfect shell I thought could protect you. But I was wrong. That shell is what hurt you the most." I didn't cry. I nodded slowly. "Do you know I used to wish I'd been born into a normal home, one where no one cared where I ranked or whether I deserved to sit at the main table?" She nodded, her eyes glassy. "Now I know." I clenched my hands around the cup. I spent nearly my whole life trying to be someone he could be proud of. But now I get it. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that he couldn't love anything that wasn't his. Margot wept. Not loudly, not theatrically. Just 2 quiet lines slipping down her cheeks. "I hope one day you can forgive me. Not today, but someday." I took a deep breath and placed my hand on the table. "I won't promise, but today I listened. And that's enough. For a beginning. And for the first time in my life, I saw her eyes soften. Not calculating or cold, but full of someone who had just realized she lost something priceless, and was finally trying to reclaim it. If there was still time. One week after meeting with my mother, I sat in my apartment in Tribeca, hands on the keyboard staring at a half-finished blank page. On the screen was a drafted email, recipient already filled in, michael.reese@reeseengineering.com. I rewrote the opening line at least 8 times. Eventually, I left a short, brutally honest message. My name is Sadie Whitmore. I believe you are my biological father. If you're open to talking, I'd deeply appreciate it. Below are my phone number and email. No pressure, just the truth, and a respectful request to connect if you're willing. Then say, I hit send and closed the screen. No expectations, no emotional prep for a reply. But 3 days later, as I was leaving the office, I got a call from an unfamiliar number with a 415 area code. San Francisco. Sadie? A raspy, calm male voice, tinged with surprise, but not panic. Yes, this is me. This is Michael Reese. I froze in the hallway, feet rooted. A long enough pause for my heartbeat to echo in my ears. I read your email, and I don't really know where to start, he continued. But if you're open to it, I'll be in New York next week for an engineering conference in Midtown. Maybe we could meet for an hour. I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. I'd like that. We met on a Wednesday afternoon at the cafe inside Park Central Hotel. I arrived 10 minutes early, and he walked in just as the wall clock struck 5 p.m. Tall, salt and pepper hair, thin, black-rimmed glasses. He didn't look like Richard, who always carried himself like he was about to go live on CNBC. Michael looked calm. There was something strangely familiar about him. I stood up. He glanced at me. His eyes softened, slowed, as if seeing something once known, once lost, now suddenly found. You look like your mother, he said gently, then added a line that tightened my throat. But the eyes, they're mine. We talked for 2 hours. No one cried. No expectations were set. I shared about myself, my work, my childhood. He told me about the engineering firm he built from scratch, about the 3 children he raised, now grown, and about how he never knew I existed. When I left for Italy, I wrote a breakup letter. Your mother never said anything about being pregnant, he said slowly. If I had known, I would have come back, no matter what. I believed him, in a strange, quiet way that needed no proof. Since then, we've stayed in touch, texting weekly, video calling when he had time. The next month, I flew to San Francisco. I met his wife. I met 2 of his 3 children, Sam and Carly, who greeted me not with suspicion, but with curiosity and warmth. I don't call them family, but it's the beginning of something not tied to pain. As for the Whitmores, I haven't returned to the Ridgefield estate since placing that DNA test result on the dinner table. Connor sent a long, angry email, blaming me for tarnishing Dad's reputation in front of key partners. I didn't respond. I let it fade into my archive, like so many unmet expectations before it. Richard, the man who once laid a hand on my shoulder and said, "A Whitmore never fails," has not mentioned my name in any board meeting since. I didn't feel hurt. I felt free. The only one I keep regular contact with is Tessa, my sister, who once shielded me with kindness as a child, is now fully grown. We met in January at an art exhibition in Soho. She held my hand as we walked out of the gallery, her voice low. You know, I always thought Dad loved you in a weird way, not like love, more like distance. Like he was afraid if he got too close, it would all fall apart. I looked at her. That's not love, Tessa. That's fear of being reminded of something he couldn't control. She nodded, eyes red. Anyway, I'm always here, not because of blood, but because you're someone I choose to keep. That sentence, to this day, remains one of the deepest things to ever heal me. Not from the man who vanished from my childhood, not from the one who pretended to be a father, but from a sister who never once looked away. I sold the Maybach 6 weeks after leaving the Whitmore estate. The broker seemed a bit surprised to learn that the owner was a 31-year-old woman working in finance, not a supercar collector or retired politician. but I didn't need anyone to understand the reason. I used the money from the sale to complete my investment in a startup focused on financial consulting for independent women, a project I had once hesitated on because Dad wouldn't see it as worthy. But now, no one sat on my shoulder anymore. Not Richard, not Connor. Not any shadow that made me feel I had to prove myself in a race with no finish line. Instead, I started therapy. My therapist's name is Meredith, in her 50s, soft-spoken but sharp. At our first session, she asked, "Sadie, if there were no one left to please, how would your true self choose to live?" That question stunned me. I had never thought about it. For most of my life, I lived to be seen. Every report card, every promotion, every expensive gift, all aimed at a nod I never received. But it was precisely the absence of that nod that forced me to learn to keep my head up and keep going. No one gave me validation. I had to sign my own name across my life. 3 months into therapy, I slept through the night without dreaming of Dad standing at my bedroom door, asking, "You think that'll impress me?" I also stopped reading business headlines just to see if my company's name showed up. I gradually stopped measuring my worth by how others looked at me, even those who once called me a failure. My relationship with my mother, Marga, didn't go back to how it was, but it took a more honest turn. We met once a month, didn't bring up the past unless I was ready, didn't avoid the truth, and didn't sugarcoat anything. She started to say, "I'm sorry," without adding a but, and I learned to listen without gearing up to defend myself. One Saturday afternoon, when I visited her at the small apartment in Westport she moved into after the divorce, she handed me an envelope filled with old letters. Letters Michael had written to her back in college. She said nothing as I opened them, just sat quietly beside me. I read them all. Each line was sincere, gentle, as if he had truly loved my mother once. And somehow, that love had lingered through me. In November, Tessa invited me to her house in Montauk for Thanksgiving. I accepted. The dinner was small, just Tessa, her husband, their 2 kids, and me. No rituals, no scrutinizing glances, no chairs arranged by invisible rules. Tessa roasted the turkey, the kids ran circles around the living room, and I helped set the table, wore an apron, mashed potatoes like I'd done it all my life. As we sat down to eat, Tessa raised her glass of red wine and smiled at me. To Sadie, the one who didn't just survive, but dared to rewrite her own story. I laughed, not the forced kind from years past, but the kind that bursts out from a place no longer heavy. I looked around the table. No one here shared my blood type. No one here had attended my graduation or watched me accept my first job offer. But everyone here chose to be present in this moment for one simple reason. They saw me. Not because I succeeded, not because of shared DNA, but because I was me. I don't know if I'll ever call Michael Dad, but I know he listens, accepts, and doesn't try to fix me. And that's enough. I don't expect my mother to make up for the past, but I see her trying step by step. For the first time, not to preserve appearances, but to heal. And I don't think I'll ever return to that old house in Ridgefield. I don't need to walk through those iron gates again, because I'm no longer standing outside hoping to be let in. I am exactly where I belong, a small dinner table, a warm kitchen, and a family that needs no proof. Freedom sometimes doesn't come from erasing the past, but from facing it and choosing to move forward, even with the scars. And growing up might just be the first time you smile, not for anyone else, but because you've stopped trying to be loved and started living like you deserved it all along. Sadie's story is a powerful reminder that kindness and effort should never become currency to earn love from those who never intended to give it. When buried truths become a weight too heavy to bear, choosing to face them and step out from the shadow of expectations is the bravest act of all. In real life, if you've ever lived just to be validated, remember this. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's gaze. It lies in the moment you choose yourself, even if it costs you an entire chapter of your past. What do you think about Sadie's journey? Was she too harsh or simply claiming what she always deserved? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and finding your way.